Frequency response describes the relationship between a device's input and output with regards to frequency and amplitude, used to describe usable frequency range. Here's a great example of what it looks like in a graph. It's relatively flat in the middle, but then it has different characteristics. Just like our ear has a frequency response, every piece of gear has a frequency response. Written as a frequency range as a tolerance, like 20 hertz to 19K plus or minus 3 decibels. So that gives you sort of a tolerance, even though it's not perfectly flat, it'll lie within that 3 decibel range from those frequencies. Here's a good example, a microphone, an SM58, Shure Brothers, which is the microphone you predominantly see at every club in town on the stage, the vocal mic. Has a ball on the end, and most people use these as live microphones. This is what the frequency response looks like. The reason people tend to like it is you see here above 1,000 hertz to 10,000 hertz, there's a little bump up of about 5 decibels in there. What does that do? That makes it sound more lifelike because it accents the upper harmonic structure of a voice. The fact is, if you use a specific mic with a curve like this, you may not have to EQ it. If you use a mic with a different kind of frequency response, you may want to EQ it because it will sound better when you EQ it. So many times your choice of microphones and how you process before you get to the EQing stage really affects, like I'm saying, when somebody gives me something that sounds rotten, I have to fix it. But if I record it and I choose the right mics and I put them in the right places and I love the sound I'm getting when I record it, then I don't really have to do a lot more to it. But that comes with a lot of experience in knowing how things are going to end up sounding mixed when you're recording them as pieces. A wire itself has frequency response. We talked about the monster cable and how, the capacitance per foot is different and lower than the ordinary guitar cable and why they sell it for so much more. What everybody neglects to tell you is that if you go ahead and take, the cable that they use for cable television, a coaxial cable it's called, that handles video signals which are way above audio signals. So if you use that as a guitar cable, it's going to sound way better than monster cable if you can actually hear the difference, because the frequency response is so much greater, it goes up so much higher before it starts rolling off the high frequencies. The only problem with it is it's solid core, so it's solid copper on the inside, and if you move it around too much, it'll break. That brings me to the more important summation point of this whole thing. Does it matter? If you like what you're hearing, that's all that matters. Whether it's correct or not correct, right frequencies, wrong frequencies, none of that matters. If it sounds good to you, and sometimes bad sounds are very artistic. So it just depends on your style, your personal taste, and it all boils down to that. I'm sitting here telling you about all the technical rights and wrongs, but now you got to get rid of them. And now that you know them, or you at least heard about them, now you got to actually do what you like. Do what sounds good to you, do what feels right to you. Because that's what's really the artistic part of it. I've always operated from that principle with the concept that if I like it, I think you might like it. That's the whole point, is that everything is an artistic expression. And if it creates a mood and communicates to your audience, that's all that matters. Please try to keep that in mind and forget about the rules. I'm just giving you a couple tips to maybe start with, or things that I know work well for me. But it may not work well for you. And the truth is, you do what sounds good to you. It may be totally not by the book, but it could become everybody copying you. That's what I'm saying. Whatever really sounds right to you guys, follow that and to the ultimate end. And do it as well as you can, because I think that individuality creates uniqueness, and uniqueness is really important in music, because when I hear your music or your music or your music, I want to know it's yours or yours or yours. I don't want to think that it's some generic thing that I don't know who did it. Communicate your identity through the music. At least that's my feeling. Of course, it's art, so whatever I'm saying is just my opinion. Dynamic range, on the other hand, is another term that we need to understand, and that's the difference in decibels between the softest and the loudest levels in the system. So the dynamic range is how soft does it get and how loud does it get. Dynamic range. In an acoustic environment, it's the difference between the ambient noise, called the noise floor, and the loudest part of a program information. The dynamic range in electronics is the difference between the highest peak of the output level and noise floor of the circuit at its quietest. Another term that we want to discuss is operating level, also called the nominal level. So generally defined as level at 0 decibels in the system. So when your meter is at 0, that's the nominal operating level. It should represent the average electronic line level. Headroom, difference between the operating level and the peak output level. Let me give you an example using all of these. So for example, a circuit has a noise floor of minus 60 decibels, an operating level of plus 4 decibels, and a maximum output level of 24 decibels. The signal to noise would be 4 minus 60, which makes it 64. So you've got 64 decibels of signal to noise. You've got headroom of 24, which is the maximum output, minus the normal operating level, which is 20 decibels. And the dynamic range is from the noise floor to the loudest thing it can do, which would be 24 minus 60, which makes it plus 84 decibels.